Hello and welcome to the latest episode of ADHD Generations. We've obviously got my co-host, my mum, Esther Barrett, next to me, and our lovely guest, Mike Howe, who's an actor, a performer, and just an all-around lovely person. So I'll leave Mike introduce him a little bit. Self a little bit.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Someone introduced me as a comedian yesterday, and I said that's a stretch. But yeah, I'm Mike. I've been a performer for 45 years, and I've done all sorts of stuff, and I've really kind of I've done all sorts of stuff, and we could talk about this, the struggle to identify exactly what I am. But I've done street theatre and acting. I write. I have recently done more theatre production. And it's a life mucking about with lights on stage or in the street with props, expressing myself publicly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So talking of your latest project, how did you and I meet?
Well, we met because I needed an ADHD life coach who could commute to Newport in South Wales for a very bizarre thing, which is to have an ADHD life coach in a rehearsal studio while two creatives with ADHD try to work on a show and figure out a show. And so I sort of, we were discussing a bit before about imposter syndrome. I always said, I blagged this money from the Arts Wales because I live in Wales. And people say, you shouldn't say you haven't blagged it. You've asked for it. You've put forward a proposal, So let me say I talked myself into this idea that it would be a cool idea for us to work together and then for us to look about how productive we were. But I think seriously, the idea was to work. What I wanted from this project was to not have so much anxiety in the rehearsal space and to see how we could, work creatively with all these bonkers ideas we have and draw them in and not feel stressed about it and precious about it and all those lovely things that we creatives like to, hold on dear to our hearts. So, take away a bit of the neurosis, I suppose. And also I'm a late stage ADHD. I have a late stage diagnosis. I found out I had ADHD it's coming up 2 years. And it was about a week before my 59th birthday. So I'm now almost 61. It's an interesting time in life to find out something like that. And it prompted a kind of life review that kind of went, oh, now that makes a lot of sense now, and I started looking at my life and the ups and downs, and mainly the downs, which are the source of much comedy, I feel, of my life. And in fact, the piece starts with a kind of, how did I get here? And then it moves towards, well, I've got to this place now, which is post-diagnosis discovery of my ADHD.
I had an amazing time working with you, Mike.
Well, thank you.
Just being in the theatre with you and your colleague, all of us with ADHD, going through the creative process with you. Occasionally, I even stood in as a prop for you, didn't I, as an audience member?
Yes, well, I have a reputation of I was going to use the F word there, I won't, but messing around with members of my audience. I did one show called Brain Rinse, which was an award-winning show. We'll come on to that in Buxton Fringe, which is where my show's happening. And
we can say now, if you like, Mike, when your show is happening, because one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast at this particular moment is because your show is going to be in Buxton Fringe in July, I think I'm right.
Yeah, it is. Let's do a quick plug because I completely and utterly lost my train of thought. So that's fantastic. Yeah, let's do it. Glad you guys are here. Obviously, I'm not the adult in the room, am I? So here we go. Yeah. Well, the show's called Daydream Extremer, and it is on Buxton Fringe. It's on at the Springfield Underground at Springfield Gardens is the venue, but you can get all the information at underthefringe.com. I don't know whether that can be flashed up at any point.
Yes,
Yeah. Link in the description.
Can we do that? I'll do this. They'll do
Yes.
it. Yeah, do that. There we go. So it's on Monday, July the 21st at 2:30 p.m. and Friday the 25th and Friday the 26th of July at 4 p.m. Both the Friday and the Saturday are 4 p.m. And I hope you can come.
Yes, we'll be there, won't we?
We'll be there, yeah.
That'll be three of us, at least.
Yeah.
I do have some advanced bookings I noticed the other day, so there we go. Great. I think I answered some question. What was the question? I don't know. Who knows?
Let's go to a different question, which is, I have a question. So it's like you've just mentioned around some of the stuff around rehearsals and creating the show and bringing it into existence. Tell us a little bit about the show itself and kind of where it came from. And I feel like there may be some structure in there as well. So you just share with us how that happened.
Well, it came from me finding out I had ADHD, going through and I'm sure a lot of your listeners feel my pain because we've all been through it, the torturous diagnosis pathway at the NHS with a 10-page form that if you had ADHD, I put it away in that form, the screening form for it. I in the drawer. It stayed in my drawer for 10 days, and then it came out, and then and I had to put it on. I was living at my sister's and I had to put it in the desk on the desk. And one day she tidied it away, and I'm. Something that Heston Blumenthal, I think, said was an act of fascism against people with ADHD. Just how could they, But I said, and she said, "Oh, because I'm selling the house, and there's viewers coming around. There's strangers, and did you want them to see your personal stuff?" I said, "Honestly, I really don't care. It has to be out there, or I won't do it." And I know other people who have put that form away and they've never taken it out, which is a massive tragedy. So anyway, it was that torturous process and trying to get, help at the time. I was trying to get a community theatre company together, and I was on my own, and it was a limited company. I'd set it all up. And in lockdown, I had this kind of, hyper focus on this, how theatre should be. And I just set this theatre company up and just registered it, and as a social enterprise. I'm like, oh God, it's just me, So I was going through all this stress of doing this, and and I remember ringing up my doctor, and I said, look, I'm just getting this anxiety or low level anxiety, not it wasn't destroying me, but I wasn't getting anything done. I just sit and kind of weep over my computer. So right, I've got a day, and I'm going to do the admin for, and I get score these grants for these shows. Then I have to put the shows on, and I'm doing everything myself and sitting in front of, one of them I had to write the show, and the actors were waiting for a script, and my mind was not right, and I was just crying over So anyway, and then he prescribed me these we've got to deal with the anxiety. And I looked up these meds. They were addictive. I know, and it's no. And I'm going, I have ADHD, and obviously it was undiagnosed at that time. And I remember thinking, Jesus, and I started writing a blog, and I thought, this is therapy. And I have this blog which I wrote down, and it's just a very personal kind of just, excerpts of my life. And it's very much an inner kind of story. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, what's going on in my mind at this point when I'm making this incredibly dumb decision, in life? What's happening? What's happening? So and feelings of being an outsider, which I've always felt, and I think a lot of people with ADHD identify with that. You kind of think. And so I was going through all of this, and I wanted to originally call the blog, this is my therapy because the NHS won't offer me any, kind of thing. That was the working title, of just journaling it and getting it all out and processing it. So I think it was a series of processing. And then I just suddenly decided I wanted to do a show. And I broke two rules that I'd vowed never to do. Because I used to put on these one-man shows and they burnt me out, and I was so burnt out. I said, one, I'll never put on another one-man show. And two, I'm not going to be one of those self-indulgent gits who do shows about their own life. Because what is interesting about my life? Absolutely nothing. So, and it was just, I started talking about it to people, and they just start saying, you have to do this show. This is going to be so helpful to people. And kind of, really? In fact, one of the most, it was either you or Hazel, I think it was you in the rehearsal studio. One of the things that kind of touched me the most was at one point you said, you're telling our story. And I kind of went, to me, it's so intensely personal to me. I always thought, well, I'm telling my story and maybe hopefully it'll resonate with people. So that's the kind of journey. And I was also just putting in lots of applications, arts council applications that were failing. I was getting more and more angry with everyone and myself as I was processing all of this stuff. And then I heard of a fund that Arts Wales did to support neurodivergent artists. So I applied for that. And of course, when I said, I'm done with theatre. Oh, you've got the grant. Oh, it seems like I'm not done with theatre, So it's a bit like I'm watching episodes at the moment. They keep trying to leave LA and they just keep having to come back. I don't really ever watch that series, but I'm done with theatre. That's the time when they give you the money. So yeah, that's how it started. And
so where are you now, Mike? Because you obviously, if you don't mind me saying, you use the blogs as a bit of a starting point, and we'll put a link to the blogs down below as well if anyone's interested, because they're lovely pieces of writing which are really enjoyable to read.
Oh, have you read them? Thank you. Oh, they haven't. You notice they haven't been added to since about 6 months ago, because that's a very ADHD thing, isn't it? Oh, I'm
taken on a life of
really
their
into
own.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm bored with it now. I'll do something else. Where's the pretty thing? Oh, it's over there. Sorry, what your question again? All right,
They were a great starting point for you, weren't they? And maybe they've done their job now. Maybe they don't need to be added to, or maybe not for now, at least, because they became the show, didn't they? In some ways.
Yes, although with a wonderful Hazel, who's a complete genius and a good friend of mine, who directed and we worked together in sort of hybrid writing and devising at the same time. We could come to that because that's an interesting process.
Yeah.
Especially for the ADHD brain. And so, yes, that was a start. It was a starting point, and it got me writing again. And I kind of went, I want to blog again, because I did a blog years ago about being a street performer, which was quite interesting. And I read some in the back, and it's weird. I read the stuff I read. If it's any good, I almost disassociate myself with it. I kind of go, wow, this guy's good. That's quite funny. I can't kind of bring myself to believe that. I mean, the blog actually came from, I put up a testimonial on the ADHD UK website, and they said, do you want, we're looking for people who would be prepared to share their experiences. So, I'm one of life's oversharers. So, not People with ADHD seem to be two things, like massive oversharers about it, or just don't, don't. But that's the field of it. I thought of the Ricky Gervais joke you told actually after that, but anyway, there's a sidebar there.
That's okay.
What are we talking about? Not Ricky
Tell us
Gervais.
more about that process that you and Hazel went through, which I observed some of it, but not all of it. You were going to talk a little bit more about that when you were devising the show.
Yeah, you see, I didn't know this, but I'm, like not very good at, my brain is not very good at sticking to rules, and very early on, I mean, and I explore this in the blog, I went into the creative industries because it was just one, it was fun, two, it interested me, and it was just like, you only had to be at one place at one time if you do a show, and that's turn up and and you rehearse and you turn up and you do it. Now, I was always really bad at learning my lines. I was always the last person to be off book. If I had 3 lines in a show, I'd be the last person to be off book. If I had 90% of the lines in the show, I'd be the last person to be off book. If I had 1 line in the show, I'd be the last person. The only show where I was the first off the book was a show I did with Alan Ayckbourn, and I had no lines. And I still managed to fall asleep at one point in this little.
Oh, no.
Lights came up, and I had to. Oh shit! I'm on. I missed one of the curtain calls because I was chatting with a director I knew in the green room. I've totally forgot the question again. This is terrible.
It's really fine. It's we're just meandering around, and it's all good.
This is an ADHD podcast, to be fair. So
our audience are well used to it. Yes.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about the how you and Hazel kind of developed what it turned into.
I know what I wanted to say. So I was very much drawn to street theatre. I know Hazel is this amazing street clown and street theatre performer. And street theatre is even more that. I mean, God, ND is and ADHD is rife in the street theatre community because, there's no admin. It's real hunter-gatherer stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just so perfect for the mindset. So I'd always devised these shows that were very improvisational. And I'd take them up to Edinburgh and I'd put them in front of an audience and I'd get reviewed really way before I should have been reviewed, really, and, probably get panned. I got panned quite a bit. Little sidebar, my best bad review was I managed to get a script sent to Hat Trick Productions through the actress who played... I wrote a sitcom, and it was the actress who played Magenta in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I met her at a party. She said, I want to do this, and she sent it to Hat Trick, and Hat Trick sent me a thing back, and they say, thank you for sending in the script. Unfortunately, we only commission sitcom scripts that are funny.
Oh.
Oh, bless you. Your RSD must have been off the scale.
I'm normally quite mortified, but that was so. I was like, I saw the funny side of it. Yes, I mean, Hazel, so what we kind of, and I also write as well. So it was combining the two things. It was like writing and filming it and rewriting it, but improvising it. So I remember, and actually a lot of the process in the use in the rehearsal space came from Hazel, because I just had no idea. I just had all this material. And in fact, we spent week 1 was I just talked about one of my favourite topics, which is myself. And I read out the blogs and I told stories and we discussed and, like it is, we discussed stuff. And even stuff weirdly that I said, this is too, I don't want this in the show. And I kind of said it to Hazel and she went, yeah, I get that as well. She said, but if you don't want to put it in the show, then it's fine. And so we talked and she's furiously writing and she had this kind of mind map at the end, which was this, if I have a photo of it, it was just massive. We had these A5s and we had about 20 of them all, and, what the show is. And And I looked at this, and I think that would just totally overwhelm most people. But there's something in my brain. We put it all up on the ruler. I just took a step back, and this was the end of week 1. And I went, wow, that's incredible. And I actually said, because I've been very much encouraged to go with what I feel, because the feelings and the energies with the ADHD brain are very important. So I went, what do I feel here? I feel quite interested. And I'm going, oh, there's that and that, because, we took, and it's like doing a painting. I was told once that writing is like a painter goes and paints a detail, then takes a step back and then looks at the outside and then comes in and then paints a detail. And I think the ADHD brain can kind of do both, but we kind of can't step between the two very easily, or I can't anyway. I like to dwell in the big picture. But anyway, I saw these things. I was like, wow. So the second week of the rehearsal was putting that on and kind of, okay, what do we want in the show? And let's have a rough structure. We can change, it doesn't matter. And Hazel would go, just improvise. And at one point, she said, how do you feel about that? And I went, well, you were laughing your head off, so I guess I feel okay about it, really.
Yeah. Hazel gave you that structure, didn't she? She gave you activities and she chunked up the time, and you were using timers and all the kinds of things that actually could work in other scenarios as well as in a rehearsal space. And it was, I think that was what she brought to the whole process, really, which you seem to really thrive in.
Yes, I mean, it was wonderful. I chose wisely there, because we have very difficult overlap of skills or experiences. Because years ago, I'd seen Hazel in a theatre piece she was in, and she was a really good actress, and I knew she'd done this device stuff that was really great. So, it was a kind of good fit in that way. There's one thing I remember, you said, because the whole bit with bringing you on board was there was a delay in from when I got the go-ahead for the finance for actually doing the project, because we couldn't nail Newport down to some dates. So there was this massive long delay. And, when I started, and in between, I got an Access to Work grant. So I am now, and I have been for, about 6 months now, I think, working with a PA and ADHD life and business coach. So, and I looked at all these hacks, all these, I was one of those ADHD people that hyper focused on ADHD when I first got it, and, learned everything about it, and then forgot 90% of that when it came up in casual conversation. And go, yeah, there's 4 chemicals in the brain that don't fire properly, and they are, can't remember what they're called, but anyway, there's the morphamine, like, I don't know, Alvin Stardustamine, I don't know,
Noradrenaline, I think, is one.
Norabatty-adrenaline, I don't know.
Yeah.
There are some kind of names, some silly names for these E's. And so between that, so when you came in, I kind of was very conscious, and I was very, let's try this, let's try that, let's try the other. But the thing that interested me was at one point you said, let's gamify it. And that is very much an ADHD thing. And it's something I very much apply when I have to do all the things I hate doing, or try to. And but that's kind of like, we were doing theatre games, which are games. So the creative process in theatre is very gamified anyway. It's interesting how it just is, and also, accountability.
Yeah.
I'm on Flown, so when I'm writing, when I'm doing stuff, I'm on these Flown sessions doing it. And of course, again, the other thing about performing is there's the ultimate accountability, isn't there? You're very aware that this stuff's got to go on in front of an audience, and if you don't get it together, you'll look stupid. And the rehearsal space is a team thing, even if it's a one-man show. I used to love doing theatre shows one of the aspects I love was this. Yeah, you know, we kind of turn up in the rehearsal space and we play and we work. But what you're doing is you're working with your peers in a sense of accountability.
Yeah,
So
it was very much a team vibe. When you were working on that show, there was very much a team vibe. It was very much a collaborative thing, and I think it was Hazel that kind of came up with the activity. I probably just said, "Hey, this is gamification," just echoing what was already happening, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah, but we looked at one point. We said, "Yeah, we're going to set Pomodoro timers," because there's one thing I wasn't aware of, which is true, which is there's a struggle to kind of. I'm very time blind, so there's a struggle to start, you know, stuff, and then when you start focusing or focus, there's a real struggle to stop. I kind of try to explain it to friends I know who are not ADHD. I mean, it's a bit like a rusty tap. You know, a tap works. You can turn it on a little bit. You can turn it on a lot. You just turn it on. You turn it off when you want. Well, I've got this kind of rusty tap that you just can't turn it on. And it takes this massive amount of effort to turn it on. And then you get it turned on and it just goes full on. And then you can't turn it off. So there's a massive amount of effort to turn it on. And mental effort is exhausting. And there's a massive amount of effort to turn it off. But so, yeah. And I wasn't realizing this. And so we said, we'll set these Pomodoro timers. And there was one session where we both said we'd set a Pomodoro and said, we'll both do it in case one of us forgets. We both failed to do it because we didn't. We set up on a phone and didn't press start. You know what I mean? So it was like,
yeah.
And Hazel did say, you know, she said at one point she was concerned. She went, look, we both have ADHD. It's like, you know, is this going to be a disaster because, you know, we both. And I thought about this. I went, no, it isn't. But I said, but we have to be very clear about what our roles are, you know, in the process. I said, no, it isn't, because this is accountability. I think we all support each other.
Yeah. And it did happen like that. From my perspective, that is exactly what happened. You supported each other. And I think it's the same if you bring a group of people together with ADHD and other neurotypes as well. We kind of support each other generally.
Yeah.
And that's lovely because there's empathy and understanding and connection, and we want to do the best for each other as a rule, I would say. So I think it worked really well. Mike, tell us a little bit more about the content of the show, as much as you want to reveal, like in terms of spoilers, obviously. But what did...
I think I've told you this before, but this is honest truth. I talked to a friend about this and I went, oh, what's your latest project? And I said, I'm doing this, my life story, the story of my life. And he went, oh, interesting. How does it end? How does my life end? Well, I think I'll die. That's how my life ends. But yeah, how does it end? Well, I hope. Yeah, it's my life story, and spoiler alert, you know, yes, I discover I have ADHD and I do something about it, but it's a very personal inner story, I think. So it's kind of it's episodes of my life seen through the perspective as, okay, this is what's going on in my mind, or a case of not knowing what's going on in my mind. And so I think if there's a theme for me, it's this. I've always been kind of, I don't know about obsessed, but really interested in identify with the outsider and with the sort of people who are marginalized. And I've always, you know, and I just thought it was my progressive liberalism that said, I mean, and it's quite a shock when you're 59 to say, actually, I am now officially disabled. It's like, and I've always been advocating for this, not knowing, but innately feeling like I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
And also the exhaustion of just trying to be neurotypical.
Yeah.
That's the exhausting thing, or has been for me. So there's a bit like, okay, great, I don't have to try to be that anymore. So it's a kind of, you look about it and it's kind of on the surface, it's a life of failure. And I suppose the view of my life and my mind and how my mind works has been really turned 100%, 180 degrees really on its head. The things that I thought were the curse were the things I can see in certain situations that saved me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, the creative stuff. It's like, I mean, I was temporarily homeless. I was on the Flintshire housing register, and I got evicted from a place. I've been officially bankrupt about 3 times in my life. I've kind of lost everything and been back to square one with absolutely nothing, including quite recently. And it's like, that's how did I get in this position? And but at those points, something in your mind goes, something kicks in, and you go, well, this has to happen. This has to happen. And you kind of joke about it. You laugh it off. You get on with it. I always used to think that I was very patient, but I've come to realize that I just have absolutely no patience whatsoever. But what I do have is resilience, and I think that's part of the ADHD mindset. And my confusion of patience with resilience, it is, interesting. And I think, I'm sure with you as well, we talked in the rehearsals about labels, about how actually important they were. To say this is hyper focus, because one of the things I deal with in the show is all these things I've taken up that I've just let go of. I've gone into them with such a passion, and I've gone, this is it. In life, you're supposed to find your thing, the one thing, you, you focus on it, and then, so and they go, choose one thing. And I'm going, well, what out of the 10 things I want to do? Choose one thing?
Exactly.
So that's exhausting,
And
So
you talk about in the rehearsals, at least, you were talking about kind of some of the dire things that had happened to you in your life, but it was really funny. The show was really funny.
funny.
So, but it wasn't like, we're not laughing at the bad things that happened, but you made it really funny. Is it still got that kind of humor in it that was in there in the
To me, it's
rehearsals?
tragicomic, and it's very, I mean, the honest answer to that is some days it's funny and it's fine, and other days it's I just curse. To be honest, I curse my whole existence some days, or that can change within a minute. There's that. There's an emotional dysregulation, which is, I think, talked about less, and because there's this obsession with education, and which is, that's obviously valid, but hey, we don't have emotional regulation, or we have less emotional regulation as well, and it gets us into the shit so many times, and then you look back and you go, how did that happen? I didn't want that to happen. How did that happen? How did we get into that argument? No, I love you. I'm sorry. Do you know what I mean? It's but yeah, the humor. I mean, they are funny, and some of the things I can go, that's funny,
So that's what
It's kind of ridiculous, especially in neurotypical terms. I think a lot of comedy characters are kind of ND.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah. I don't know why Mr. Bean just sprang to mind then. I don't know. Comedy characters, you said. So
I suppose he couldn't speak, could he? So
it was all just very,
yeah.
Okay. I won't go any further down that road. But but yeah, I think you're right. And just to pick up on your word tragicomedy, that was when I was watching the rehearsals, that's how I felt. Like one minute I'd be like tear would be coming out of my eye, and the next minute I'd be laughing uncontrollably. And I think you have a very brilliant way of like bringing those two things together.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, but and I'm glad you say that, because that's my kind of theatre. Is I like that when it turns on a knife, you know, from something that you're laughing hysterically, and then it hits you. And I think all these good, you know, the great writing in even sitcoms or in comedies or anything, it has that you know, it turns on an edge, like, because it's very non-binary. I mean, life is very non-binary, and our minds are very non-binary, and you know, it can kind of be both, really. I mean, I find the whole life of my life is very bittersweet anyway. You know, it just isn't. And I also have been thinking about this. I think this is how, in some ways, and the mental health system, and I don't wish this to, you know, I'm not to do it down, but it doesn't see the non-binary nature of our minds, really. You know, I think I say about this in a blog. I took a few blogs down because they were particularly angry, and also I started. I mean, I'm doing part-time teaching, and I was going into schools. I thought, put them back up at some point. But you know, I tried to go into schools about 20 years ago when I was one of my sort of desperate periods, and I just hated it, and it just threw up so much crap that I just.
Yeah,
that's progress. I got to go in and go, okay, yeah, I can do this. This will pay the rent.
That is progress.
But yeah, the non-binary thing. So tragedy and comedy. I mean, there is ridiculousness in. You know, there's that thing about, you know, like, this happened to me. I can't believe this happened to me. I have a flight, and and it's a work flight, and it's been paid for, and I have to go to Austria to do a job, you know, a performing job. And I just said, well, I'm really bad at packing. So this was years ago, 20, 30 years ago. So I go, right, okay, I'm going to, you know, and I had to leave the house. It worked out, I had to leave the house. I think it was 3 PM. Then that would comfortably give me enough time to do all the check-in, all the stuff. Right, okay, so at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got one job to do until 3 o'clock. I'll pack. That's fantastic. I can do that. You know, I'll have the whole afternoon free. I'll have and I see this software that I haven't used, and I put the thing in the computer, and I start like trying to noodle around with this video editing software. And I go, I'll just check it's right. Okay, I'll look up. Oh yeah, okay, 12. I've still got that. Okay, I'll just splice 2 bits of thing together, and I go, to me, what seems like half an hour, I'm going like this, and I look up, it's 3 o'clock, and I look at the empty suitcase, 3 o'clock. You know, it's just like that. How can someone do that? And you know, it felt like an obsession at the time, but it's not. It was just a hyper focus, you know, and not knowing the time. But yeah, there's also I've had friends that I think they're quite NDs. If I got in a bad mood, I'd go off in a rant. I just rant at something, and they just laugh at me. In that moment, I would see what's funny as well, and I'd laugh at myself, and it was kind of laughter's a great diffuser, you know. So so you just, if you can laugh at yourself, then great. But yeah, it's very much. I was also very inspired by some performers I knew when I was young, who one sadly passed away. He was a street performer, but his comedy was so painful. You know, that honestly is funny. You know.
Yeah.
And you're inviting the audience. The difference between you and the rest of us is that you're inviting the audience to share in that laughter at yourself, but also your pain as well.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. For all of us.
Fair enough. So brave, though. So brave what you do.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Thank you. I mean, to me, it's like, you know, it's in some ways, I like to think in some ways within the ADHD community, I'm in a bit of a privileged position. You know, I'm quite well educated, pretty intelligent, articulate, and I write, and I'm a natural show off, and I've been in the theatre for years. So, that's, I feel like it's kind of my way of advocating. I mean, it is brave, but I think it's just brave. I think it's brave for anyone to say, this is killing me. I need help. I'm feeling this. To be honest, I have friends who have ADHD, and they're just going through such a more worse time than me.
Yeah.
And I find them the brave people, and I feel just like we're all together, and I'm advocating, like you say, my story, our story. I just feel like I'm in a position that I can say.
And maybe we're doing something similar with this podcast as well.
Perhaps.
So we're kind of advocating as well, I guess.
Yeah,
aren't we?
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Working with coaches, working with you as an actor and performer, and working with all the other people that we work with. It is about us as a community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. And the big thing is like you suddenly find out you're not alone. And wow, there are. It's the things like I realised that your friendship groups, and you're attracted to people who are ND. You are ND, because birds of a feather flock together, and see yourself in other people. And it's very strange. Like for me, working in schools, going into schools, it's fine, it's good, but it's. Apart from the fact I'm thinking, I went to school down the road. I don't remember much about it being at school. But I'm also like, I don't know, I don't dwell on this in the show so much, but I'm twice exceptional, like a lot of people are ND. And I have a high IQ, which I found that out a few years ago. That completely amazed me as well. How can someone with a high IQ go bankrupt 3 times?
Well, ADHD.
Yeah, it'd probably be the ADHD. Yeah, I imagine so.
Bless you. Look, we're coming just towards the end of our time now.
Yeah.
But you've described in a really interesting and creative way the really interesting and creative life that you've had, and the way that you're bringing it together in this beautiful piece that people are going to be able to see and take and participate in with you, really, by sharing the laughs and the tears and so on within your show. So just really looking forward to being there for you in Buxton.
Definitely.
I'm very much looking forward to it. And if anyone wants to come along, I guess we can do that, flash up some details.
Yeah, right. Yeah, link here. Hopefully James can sort that, and also the link will be in the description below as well.
Fantastic.
So.
And just to reiterate, that's July.
Yes.
2025.
2025.
I probably said that wrong, didn't I? July. I better be there.
Let's hope so.
You have to be there. Oh, Mike, it's been so lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so much more we could say, and you're right to stop me.
Maybe we'll have an episode 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it again after Buxton?
Yeah, like a post-show thing,
Let's do it again.
Definitely.
And that'd be great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and like and subscribe. Thank you. And see you soon.
See you next time.
Bye.